Hi, my love. Welcome to the Gemma Hanley podcast. My name is Gemma. I'm your host. This is the space where I have honest conversations about overcoming anxiety and overwhelm so that you can calm your nervous system and feel really confident and happy and calm from within yourself. Along the way, I share my own stories of holistically healing 23 years of anxiety and depression myself. And so, if you're a woman seeking answers to perfectionism, people pleasing, burnout, resistance, you may love, you're in the right place. Let's do it. Let's begin. And before we begin, I want to pay my respects and acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land upon which I am recording from, which is the Gubbi Gubbi tribe. And I want to extend that acknowledgement to their elders, past, present, and emerging, as well as anybody of Indigenous or Torres Strait Islander heritage watching this replay. Hello, my love, and welcome to 2023. And our first potty episode of the year. You may have guessed from the title, we're talking about goals and vision today. And this conversation is really a continuation from the prior podcast episode, which was called Before You Set Your 2023 Goals. And so if you haven't listened to that one, my invitation to you is to return and have a listen to that one. Give it a whirl before you listen to this one, so that you have a little bit more context and you can piece things together and really just squeeze the most value out of these conversations as possible, which is exactly what I want for you. In case you're a bit of a rebel and a badass and you're like, nah, I'm not going back. I'm not going to listen to that episode. I'm here. This is what I'm doing. Let me give you a little bit of context about who this conversation is for, because the conversation I had in that last podcast episode is not for every woman. Yeah. Who it is for, it's for the woman who is painfully clear on what it is that she wants from life. And the reason she is painfully clear is because she knows she can name it, she can see it out in the world, but she doesn't feel like it is within her reality. Yeah, so that might look like year after year declaring with incredible courage and vulnerability what it is that she wants to call into her life, what her desires are, what would just swell her heart. But for some reason, that is not coming to fruition. Yeah. And there is always a reason. But she's feeling blind as to what that reason is, despite pouring her heart and soul into the process of showing up in every way she knows how to create these things as her reality, but it's just not happening. Or maybe it's happening, but only to a really small degree of what she can see and what she senses within herself and knows is actually possible. Because she's attuned to what her potential is, even if that is not currently where she's at. Or maybe she has the thing, maybe she has the desire, but there is just such a lack of confidence or ease and flow to maintaining that, or there is so much fear around self-sabotage or losing it, that it actually takes a lot of energy. It's really difficult for her to enjoy and feel fulfillment in. And of course, from that place, it's almost impossible to expand even further and build even more of what it is that we want. So that, my love, is who this conversation is for. It is for the woman who has sat in pain around her desires and is really clear on what she wants, but doesn't know why she doesn't have it. And that was a huge part of the last conversation I had. And I also shared with you a lot of my personal experiences, particularly over the last 12 months of dancing in that space, of things not coming, like things coming into my world and into my reality, but certainly not in the way that I envisaged it or imagined it or planned it to have happened, which I think it's really important to always be open when we're setting goals and setting a vision for a year, the year ahead, that we trust the process and we're open to how that comes into fruition, how it comes to be, as opposed to the opposite or the alternative to that would be really fixated, gripping really hard, needing to control everything, micromanaging everything, needing these unobtainable levels of certainty that just mean that life is not a good time. Yeah. So that's a good summary of how these two podcast episodes link together. In today's episode, I'm going to be having some conversations with you around what I think is important to consider when you are looking at setting your goals and your vision for 2023. Something I do want to just flag here, probably mentioned it in the last potty too. The fact that it's a new calendar year is not a good enough reason for you to be sitting down and creating new goals or setting a new vision. Yeah. In fact, you're allowed to do that at any point in the year. And often I will do that. I'll stop, I'll reassess, I'll pivot, I'll give myself permission to change what my focus has been because I've learned more about who I am and what it is that I want and what lights me up inside. And so if you sense that you are just getting on the bandwagon, you're doing it because you should, you're doing it because you have to, you're doing it because it's the inverted commas right thing to do, I actually invite you to give yourself some space around that and like release the pressure a little bit. And I'm not saying don't do it, but maybe just give yourself some space first. And hopefully this conversation will maybe really help for you to feel more drawn and settled in the process of what it is that you need around this. I have actually created, well, I haven't created it. I've updated last year's ebook that I offered to you for free. It's also free this year, which walks you through the exact process I personally use and that I teach my clients at this time of year for setting your goals and outlining and declaring what your vision is. So if you would like a copy of that, all you need to do is send me a DM on Instagram. My handle is at Gemma E. Hanley. Just send me a DM that says goals and include the email address that you would like it sent to, and I will arrange that for you, beauty. And a lot of the conversation from today is going to anchor into the content. So if you're listening to this conversation and there's like little bits and pieces where you're like, oh, I could apply it from this, but I need more of a framework. I need more structure. I would just like the workbook of how to move through this and do it properly. That is what this ebook is all about. And I've designed it in a way where if you want to, it takes no more than 45, 50 minutes to sit down and move through this process. And then of course, depending on where you're at, how rewarding you find it, you can pad that out a little bit and spend a bit more time if you want to, but it's not essential. So today's podcast, it's going to be, yes, like I said, I'm going to walk through some of the conversations that link into that ebook. And then towards the end, I think what I might actually do is just speak into 3 topics that I find super popular whenever I'm talking about goals or vision or future. Without doubt, clients, or really even just the people I come into and interact with and engage with, will inevitably ask a question in one of these 3 categories. So I just want to jam a bit and maybe just give like some really quick rapid fire perspectives on what I personally believe, from a psychology, from a performance behavioral space, what my views are on these. And so that would be morning routine, motivation, and manifestation. It's like a 3 M's, right? So we'll get to that at the end of this conversation, but let's dive in. So I personally believe one of the most powerful things that we can do to get more of what we want in the year that is ahead is to actually do an audit and a review of 2022. Yeah, to look at what showed up for us, what happened, what didn't happen, what did we learn, what felt good, what did we celebrate, because there is just so much freaking gold in that space. And I know from personal experience, from observing my clients, that some of you listening to me say that, you're going to feel like a contraction and you're going to feel like, oh, that does not feel like fun. That does not feel like something that I want to do, because sometimes we can look to the fresh year and have this maybe inflated or false hype around the idea of like new year, new me, like fresh canvas, blank slate. I think I got those sayings around the wrong way. Blank canvas, fresh slate. I don't know. I think though that you know what I'm talking about. And, doing the inner work and truly healing and growing, there's no space for us to sort of just like shake off what didn't work last year without looking at what caused that to be the case, because those patterns are actually still there. Yeah. Unfortunately, it's not as simple as a new calendar year flicking over and, you know, our neurology and our nervous system and our subconscious patterns all of a sudden are different, right? And I really want this, I want you to listen to this and I want it to land. The choices that you have made and make, the results that you have and that you don't yet have, yeah, they simply come down to the patterns that are playing out at a subconscious level for you and being expressed through your neurology and through your nervous system. It really is that simple. Yeah. And they can be changed, but in order for them to be changed, you have to be willing to look at them and take ownership of them. Yeah. And that's what we can do by reflecting and gathering the wisdom and looking at what we learned, looking at what we were taught, looking at what felt good, looking at what we would do differently, looking at where we felt shame and embarrassment from choices that we made. All of that is just pure gold, right? And this, my love, is a perfect example of why I say this conversation is not for everyone, because a lot of women will not be, they just won't be willing to look and to feel uncomfortable so that they can see so clearly exactly the roadmap as to what would need to be healed, what would need to be changed, what would need to be different, so that they can have exactly what it is that they want. Yeah. And so this might be like quite an appropriate moment for me to just pose the question and invite you to consider, are you willing to be that woman that does look and does take ownership? Yeah. And so the ebook's going to take you through some of these questions to help you reflect on, what is it that you learned? What is it that you were taught? Yeah. Intentionally or unintentionally. Yeah. And the gold is often in the unintentional stuff, right? So, how we've navigated shit and the mess and the mud and the chaos that has shown up that we did not plan for, right? But also what felt good, again, intentionally, but maybe unintentionally. What did you celebrate, right? Or what did you maybe forget to celebrate that was really freaking epic? Yeah. So, I think that we want to be careful that we're not bypassing and avoiding and ignoring these incredible insights and the incredible wisdom that can come from reviewing the year. The next thing that is really important to look at is, what do you want? Right? What do you want from 2023? And which of those answers are coming from your head? And which of those answers are coming from your heart? Because sometimes there will be a conflict there. I can't tell you how many women have sat in front of me and said, on paper, I have everything I thought I wanted, but it doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel like enough. It doesn't light me up inside. Yeah. And that's because they're running their life from their head rather than dropping into their body and feeling from their heart and trusting their intuition. Another thing I'm going to invite you to look for when you answer this question or when you hear what comes up when I say to you, what do you want? Is the language that pops up, either in your self-talk, internal dialogue, or literally what you're writing out on paper, the words that you're speaking. Yeah. If you were to answer that back to me right now, and you might even want to hit pause and then answer it back to me right now. What is the language you would use to answer the question, what do you want? Right? Because most of us, and this comes back to the beginning where I said the women that this conversation is for, they're painfully clear on what they want. Most of us are very aware of where we're in pain. And a lot of our language centers around that pain, right? So an example might be, I don't want to feel controlled by anxiety anymore. Yeah, that could be an answer when I ask you, what do you want? And ultimately, the core focus and feature and headline in that language is still being controlled by anxiety, right? And so an alternative answer that would use language that is focused on what you want might be, I want to feel happy and confident and calm and free from within. I want to feel capable of navigating whatever life puts on my path. I want to feel like I'm devoted to my long-term sustainable happiness instead of continuously, and this is some don't want language, this is a bit the opposite, dipping out for immediate gratification, going so far, but then taking the easy exit or the easy route. Yeah, giving up. So that's definitely something that's important to look at, because again, if we're speaking to our subconscious, and so much of what we create in our life and what we are noticing, what we are perceiving, is instructed from our subconscious. Yeah. And so to be able to communicate with our subconscious and create some shifts and changes there, we need to be talking about what it is we do want rather than what it is that we don't want. So if we're talking and using language like happiness, confidence, calm, freedom, we're automatically going to be more inclined, or our subconscious is going to be more inclined to detect evidence of that, to detect examples of that. Whereas if we're using like control, anxiety, fear, panic, stress, nervousness, self-doubt, yeah, even if we're saying, I don't want, insert those things, you're instructing or giving advice to your subconscious to look for more of that and create more of that as well. Yeah. When I set goals, when I look at a life vision, and when I walk women through this process, I ask them to look at 6 different key areas of life, right? And so those key areas are relationship, and that includes the relationship with yourself and spirituality and any source of energy or spirit that is greater than yourself. Health is another one. Lifestyle and play is another one. Yeah. So how is it that you're playing? How is it that you are experiencing pleasure and joy and fun and lightheartedness? What does your lifestyle look like? Another one is career, business. Yeah. What's happening in that area? The 5th one is money and wealth. Yeah. What is happening in that key area of life? And the last one is purpose. Yeah. What is your purpose for being here? That may be expressed through your career and business, but is certainly not limited to that. And an example of that for me is huge parts of my purpose is joy, shared experiences, right? And so I experience joy and shared experiences through my work when I'm having conversations with women, when I'm seeing them heal and grow and get more of what they want in their life. But I also experience joy and shared experiences when I'm running around the park with my niece and nephew, or when I'm laying in the sun. There's so many different ways my purpose for being here is expressed, and it is absolutely not limited to my business or to my career. And in that same sense, if I ever decided to do something different, in career or run a different business, I would still be able to express that purpose through a completely different role or a completely different business, right? So it's not attached to your career and business, which, is a common misconception and something that I see women take a minute or two to process and understand, separating that out. So when you ask yourself that question, what do I want in the language of what I want versus what I don't want? Look for it in these key areas of life. And another little tip that has just dropped in that I can give you around this whole do want versus don't want language piece is, if you find that you are so well practiced, you're an expert at using language that describes what you don't want to have happen, and you just put I don't want in front of it, ask yourself this. If, and then insert. So if feeling controlled by anxiety is what I don't want, what do I want? Yeah. So what's the alternative to that painful existence? What's the alternative to what it is that you want to heal and grow beyond or let go of? What's the alternative that you do want? Yeah. And so again, this ebook around setting your goals and your vision steps you through this entire process. I give you question prompts, and I even give you like suggested timeframes to put on a timer and sit down and just basically just let the vision or the goals come through you, and connect to your heart and hear those, and just do like a big scribble session. And then I walk you through how to refine those down as well. And one of the things that I think is really powerful, so there's two different ways that I really feel we can set a vision for the year ahead. One is more relaxed, more general, and the other is more specific and more detailed. So when I talk about more relaxed and more general, what I'm suggesting is that you can drop in and really connect to what are maybe 1 to 3 words that describe the state of being that you want to embody, who you want to be, how you want to feel, what you want to create in the year ahead. Now, I'm just going to, I can't think of the word I want to use. I'm just going to flag something here. It's a good enough word. I want you to check that if you only use this way of setting your vision or your goals for the year ahead, I want you to check and make sure that you're not using it to bypass or to be passive or to avoid what feels challenging or uncomfortable in sitting down and figuring out what it is that would be meaningful for you this year. Yeah. If you're using this more relaxed, general way to set your vision because you don't want to discover what your vision is, you don't know what it is, and it feels painful to go there, I'm sorry, my love, but that's not going to get you where you want to go. If, on the other hand, you're somebody who typically has been very detailed in your goals and almost like quite rigid, and it's been like a non-negotiable that happens, and you've heavily relied on and depended on that structure, which inherently suggests that you struggle with trusting yourself, you struggle with going more with the flow. You maybe are in that category I talked about earlier of needing unobtainable certainty or needing to be in control of everything and gripping everything. Maybe using these words is a really great way for you to practice trust and to practice connecting to yourself. Yeah. So with these words, you want to come up with and feel into some words that really just click for you around who you want to be, what you want to feel, and what you want to create. And give this space, right? Like mine only dropped in for me 2 days ago. And I'd been giving it space since it's the 5th of January today. So that was the 3rd of January that it dropped in. I'd been giving it space since like Christmas, maybe a little bit before Christmas, right? And so you want to be able to articulate really clearly what it means to be embodying that word as well. That is a great check for you, that you're really clear on what it is that you want. So some examples for you. Last year, 2022, I chose 3 words. I'll share one of them with you as an example, and then I'll share this year's. So one of the words was listen. And that was very intentionally chosen because I wanted to drop even more deeply into listening to my intuition without second guessing it, without checking it. Yeah. Really more deeply trusting what I was sensing, what my body, what my emotions were showing and telling me. I also wanted to practice listening to others more deeply and being more present. And eye contact was a big part of how I wanted to do that. And I wanted to engage in and entertain and call in and give more time to relationships where I felt deeply heard, listened to, seen. And part of what that means to me is that when I was sharing with someone, they weren't just waiting for their time to speak, or they weren't waiting to give me their opinion. They weren't waiting to make suggestions to me unless it was invited and that was part of the conversation. Yeah. So you can see how when I've just described what that one word means for me, I was really, really super clear on what it would look like, who I would be, how it would feel, what I would be creating, anchored into that word. This year, 2023, the word that has dropped in for me is ground. Yeah. I want to be grounded. I want to feel grounded. I want to create this sense of being grounded. And part of the reason why that word has dropped in is I have just worked so hard for the last 5 to 10 years in understanding who I am, loving all parts of me, healing, growing. I've also relocated a lot. And towards the end of last year, I really felt like the biggest fruits ever in so many different areas of my life were just dropping in from that process. And I really just want to be present with that. I want to be with all that. I am moving next week into a home for the first time in so long where there is no plan to be up and leaving from that, or there's no time frame in which I will need to move on from that place. And that just feels so freaking delicious to me and my nervous system. And I just know it's going to free up so much more of my masculine energy to not be carrying and holding like the logistics of moving myself and a business and running a business on the road and being in temporary locations. And all of those moves in the past have served me beautifully. And now I'm ready to ground. I want to put roots down. I want to feel really calm and like this sense of things being permanent for as long as I want them to be permanent. With community that's around me, with my routines, really just ground into what I've created in my business over the last 3 years, ground into the relationships that are around me, and ground into just like a beautiful home space where I've just landed and there's no plan to fly. So there's some examples of like, that's how clear, my love, I want you to be on these words that you're choosing, especially if you're not going to do the process of setting some more specific and detailed goals. Yeah. But both options are inside that ebook as well. Where I want to move this conversation to now is probably what I would consider all of this is really important. It's funny because I'm sitting here and I'm like, for me, the vision and the goals, like in the literal sense of like writing them down and knowing what they are, that is important. But it's just like it holds such little power without doing the review of the year prior that we talked about at the start of this podcast, and without looking at these next two things I'm about to walk you through as well, right? They're just like words on a page with no life to them if we're not prepared to like look at what is happening around them. And when I say around them, I mean look at what's happening in our psychology, our neurology, and our nervous system. So the next question that I would have, and that I would really, really prompt you to consider, is what do you need to let go of this year to get more of what you want? Because despite wishful thinking, when we heal and when we grow, our life as it has been cannot continue to coexist in all forms, in the exact same format, and for us to grow and to reap the rewards and to step into and feel and experience the goals that we're outlining. It just can't coexist, because we can't be the same person if we want to get a different result. We have to be adaptable, we have to be flexible, we have to shift, we have to change, and we have to be able to see what would need to shift and change. Now, that doesn't mean all of who you are has to disappear or has to be let go by any means. I'm not suggesting that at all. But there will be parts that you will need to make peace with letting go of, or accept that they will need to take a different form going forwards if you want to have the goals and the vision that you've outlined. So let me walk you through I've got so many examples of this. I've learned this so well after embodying it for years and years and years, that it is just like, it's just how I operate now. And there are times where it feels more painful. And then there's other times where I just don't even bother sitting in the pain of it anymore, because it's such a known experience for me that where there is excitement, I'm pretty sure there's an actual full podcast coming on this topic, but where there is excitement, meaning you're leaning into new things that are meaningful and that you want and you desire, there's also going to be grief. There's going to be letting go, right? We cannot stay the same if we want to have different experiences. I think I've said that enough times now. So one example for me, which I moved through late last year, like definitely the second half of last year, was I really had to let go of this goal or this like dream or vision that I'd had for quite some time of living in Bali. And I definitely didn't want to live there permanently. And for me, it could have been anything from probably like 4 months to like 18 months. And what I came to realize was that the window of that being a reality for me had really closed unless I was willing to compromise on some of the other goals I had or some of the other ways I wanted to live my life. And I just wasn't willing to compromise on those. So the window of when I would have loved to have done this was during COVID. So when the rhythm of the world just like totally changed and it wasn't possible. And then based on a number of different things, including like just where I feel like I'm at in life, where my business has been at, my desire to ground and to put down roots, my desire to not move again and be building a community that I know I'll be moving on from, and routines that I know I'll be moving on from. My desire to not go through that was greater than my desire to have this experience or to live this goal of living overseas and living in Bali and having that lifestyle. And so if that was something I wasn't willing to let go of, I'd be sitting in a lot of conflict around what it is that I wanted right now. Because I'd be like, well, like I might want to do this, but I might want to do that. And like, I want to do this, but I also want to do that. And I can't do both. And I could easily tell the story. That means I don't know what I want and I can't do either. Right. But it's actually just not true. I had to get clear on where was I prepared to compromise? Where did I need to let go of something so I could have more of what I wanted? Another example in the past with business was, when I first started working as a coach, I worked from a physical location in a holistic health clinic, and I was amongst the most phenomenal people. Like maybe up to 8 different practitioners. We would bounce off each other, learn so much from each other. But we were really, really good friends. It was like a second home. It was like family, like we knew each other's partners and kids. We spent time in each other's homes. It was a really like deeply meaningful and rewarding part of running my business, but just my life, my lifestyle, and my relationships as well. And what I began to realize was it was restricting the vision that I had for my business eventually, right? One of the ways that was happening is because I needed to be in a physical location to see clients on a set time frame. And that wasn't working for me because I wanted location freedom. So I needed to be building a business model that was online. And I also wanted to provide more flexibility to clients, so that they didn't have to see me on these really small set times, and they didn't have to travel to see me in a specific location. Yeah. I was also building a business under another brand. Yeah. The brand name of the clinic. And so it was more of like a contracting relationship or a contracting model than an actual business model as well. And there were so many benefits, and I absolutely loved it. And I just had so much fun when I was there. And it was one of the hardest decisions I had to make to move on from that, especially that, like, more than anything, the team and the relationships. And yet it was something I had to let go of to get more of what I wanted. I wouldn't be sitting here in Queensland recording this podcast, right, and having traveled as much as I have this year if my business was run from a physical location, right? So that was another example of something I had to let go of to get more of what I wanted. Over the years, relationships have been a big one, right? I heard a quote recently that was something like, you can't expect to elevate if the majority of conversations you're having or content you're exposing yourself to is either affirming that you can't elevate or they haven't done it themselves. So you're inherently, if they haven't done it themselves, you're not exposing yourself to conversations that expand your neurology and your nervous system, expand your creativity, and creative thinking and curiosity around what's possible for you. You're not exposing yourself to content that gives you the answers you need to be able to move forward and grow. Right. And so at different times, I've needed to like pivot and shift and adapt where I'm spending my time, energy, love, and attention most in relationships. Because if I'm not having conversations about business, if I'm not having conversations about self-awareness, if I'm not having conversations about like maybe like controversial values or like being challenged, if I'm not having conversations where I'm feeling challenged by people to know where I stand or who I am as a person or what my line in the sand is, then guaranteed I'm not growing. Right? Because I can do that in the relationship with myself, but I'm limited to the expansion and the areas my neurology and my nervous system's been to. And I can't take myself where I haven't been. Other people, other environments, other events, other relationships can do that. Right. And so that there's been times where I've had to like step out of relationships that, not step out completely, but like adjust where I'm spending my time. Yeah. Which, like, I'll go back to exciting, rewarding, fun. And there's grief around that. There's hardship around that. There's challenge around that as well. There's been times where I've had to stop income streams in my business because they have been taking up so much of my capacity and time and energy and attention that I couldn't scale my business whilst also offering those services, right? Which felt ludicrous and crazy at the time. When I sat back and looked at it, I realized that those two things couldn't coexist. I couldn't scale, like I couldn't put the systems and restructures in to scale my business and keep multiple income streams where I am the service provider or I am the service as a coach running. And so like having to pause income to be able for 3 months, 6 months, whatever the time frame is, to be able to set up the foundations to do things differently for the long term results. So again, having to let go of something, or having to, and that something, guys, can also be certainty. It can be time. Yeah. It can be location. The things that we need to let go of, or that we're required to let go of to get more of what we want, they come in all different shapes and forms, right? Like maybe it's money. There's been so many times where I've lived off bare essentials, and really like compromise my lifestyle to the minimum that felt okay with me, so that I could just invest back into the business, or I could pause income streams for longer term gains. There has been so many times I've moved back in with my parents, right? I've been living with my dad this year. I'm just about to move back out into my own place. I moved back in with my parents twice for my health. When I was anxious and experiencing depression and chronic fatigue syndrome. And then I moved out, and then twice more I've moved back in purely to be able to continue running my business, right? Because at one point I was like, I don't really want to pay rent at a clinic and pay rent to live when that's not something I have to do. And then, staying with my dad this year has meant I was able to invest and into the business and spend money growing different parts of the business and engaging coaches that I needed the support and intellect and guidance of, so that I could grow to a point where, things were far more sustainable and far more rewarding for my future as well. So there's some examples, of times when I've needed to let go of something, or I've needed to compromise and haven't really wanted to, like it hasn't been my preference or my ideal. I'm going to rephrase that. Hasn't been my preference or my ideal. Ultimately, I've wanted to because I've done it. And this is something we need to get really clean and clear on, my love, because if you are choosing something, you want it. Right? Even when you feel like you're choosing it kicking and screaming, or even when you feel like you're choosing it and it's not serving you, or it's not getting you what you want, or it's not how you want it to be, you are still choosing it. These are some examples of when I chose to let go, even when it didn't feel like if I could have had it, inverted commas, my way, it wouldn't have necessarily been how I would have liked it to go. And this is a conversation I have with clients all the time. You don't have to like what needs to happen to get what you want. I'm going to say that again. You don't have to like what needs to happen or what you need to do to be able to get what you want. You just have to decide whether or not you want that thing enough that you are willing to let go and you are willing to compromise. Now, just going to flag this again. This was a huge, huge part of the conversation that I had in the prior potty before setting your 2023 goals. So if this concept and this conversation is landing with you, or like something inside of you is just spiking up or sparking up, and it's like, oh, this could be a blind spot for me. This could be a missing piece for me. I think I need to lean into this and understand this a little bit more. I'm not sure I agree with it yet. Not sure I like it, but I think I need to hear this. Go back and listen to that podcast episode. And my love, the last question that I am going to pose to you before we move into just some quick conversations around those topics I mentioned at the start is, I want you, once you've set your goal, or even once you've set the theme words, to narrow down on what is the most important goal, or what is the most important embodiment that you want to have of that word, of all, above all the goals that you've set, above all the ways that you could be embodying listening, or could be embodying feeling grounded or grounding. What's the most important goal of all, right? Because it can become really easy to feel like everything is equally important. And then we're spread so thin, we're confused about what should be prioritized, or we're shifting and pivoting and changing gears all the time on what we're prioritizing. So nothing is really progressing that significantly, right? And I say to my clients quite often, if you're really, really clear on what you want, which is what I help them to do, and if it is significant, like if it's a significant change that you want, one or two key areas like one thing in one or two key areas is going to be the most that you can hold at any one time. Yeah, so not for any specific time period as such, but to really make significant shift and change and growth, we can't be scattering our focus across multiple different things. What happens then is the energy is stagnant, and you won't be able to detect that because you will feel like you're showing up in every way you know possible to exercise, to nutrition, to career development, to wealth building, to healing physical symptoms or part of your health, or to prioritizing understanding and overcoming anxiety, to making sure that you're living a lifestyle that has more play and pleasure in it. And whilst you're showing up and you're exerting all of that energy, it's stagnant because it's not linked to any core focus, or it's not linked to what I should say, it's not linked to a leading focus, right? And it's the consistent, continuous gifting of time, energy, love, and attention in one clear direction that gets you where you want to go, right? And I'm going to actually just link this straight into the first topic. I'm going to start from the bottom up, manifestation, because I find it so interesting. I do and I don't. I find it interesting when I come up into contact with people who still believe that manifestation is when you say something, you have it, and if you don't say it, you don't, right? And when I talk about stagnant energy and not having it linked into a core intentional focus, when we take our time, energy, love, and attention and send it in one core intentional direction, we get to see here's the words, consistently and continuously do that. The gift that we get, which feels very uncomfortable, very confusing, very painful, the gift that we get is we face into everything that is keeping us stuck, that is preventing us from getting where we want to go, that feels like self-sabotage, right? And manifestation is looking at that shit. It is looking at, okay, what is it at a subconscious level that needs to be healed, that needs to be honored, that needs to be respected, that needs to be understood, so that I can free this energy, neutralize and then free this energy and continue in this direction past this hurdle or past this challenge that feels like self-sabotage. It's looking at, okay, well, where is it that I'm out of alignment, I'm out of integrity, I'm not being congruent with the person who has what it is that I say I want? Where is it that I am wishing I didn't have to step up? Where is it that I'm avoiding having hard conversations? Where is it that I am letting fear dominate? Yeah. And it's not that by no means do we need to eliminate fear or even remove fear. What the difference is not being reactive or not responding out of fear. Yeah. And fear can still be there without us reacting and responding out of it. Manifestation is all of this. Yeah. It is not as simple as, let me just say some pretty color-coded affirmations that are like up on my wall, and let me just write out my goals and then like do a meditation around them and some breath work. And, you know, it's so much more than that. It is that. Those things are cool and they're definitely helpful. But manifestation, the key part of manifestation is being willing to look at what's happening at a subconscious level, embrace that, love on that, work through that, understand that, because that is the only thing that is blocking you from getting to where you want to go. So that's what I have to say on manifestation. Kind of links into what I said before around, you can write your goals on a piece of paper and you can know what your goals are, but they're kind of lifeless without having these bigger conversations around them of psychology, neurology, nervous system. Motivation. That's the next one I just wanted to give you a little spin on. Inevitably, oh my goodness, it's one of my favorite conversations to have because it's a quick one, right? We can really begin to understand what we're missing around motivation quite quickly. It's inevitable that when I'm talking about goals or vision or progress or improvement, healing, growth, that I will hear the words, I just need to feel more motivated. If I could just be more motivated, this would be working. This would be moving ahead. Like, what's wrong with my motivation levels? How can I feel more motivated, right? And so the first thing I ask the person sharing this with me is I say to her, well, how do you know when you are motivated? Like, for you to know that you're not motivated right now, you must know when you are. So how do you know when you're motivated? And inevitably the response that I will get is, oh, well, like I'm getting up early or I'm going to bed early and I'm moving my body consistently and my nutrition's on point and I'm hitting KPIs at work and like I feel like I'm achieving my goals and I'm doing really good with money or like I'm following a budget and I feel excited to socialize and I feel engaged and stimulated to socialize and along the theme of these types of activities or measures. And I reflect back to this woman, have you ever considered that all of these measures fit into the category of doing, right? And that maybe there's actually nothing wrong with your motivation levels. Maybe as a human being, we're motivated to be as well as do. Yeah. And maybe in the fact that there's nothing wrong with your motivation levels, maybe, just maybe, what you're actually feeling motivated around right now is to simply be, whether that is more of an inward season of being a little bit more introverted. Maybe you're feeling motivated to restore a little bit more. Maybe you're feeling motivated to remove some commitments that are no longer fulfilling or that really served you in the past and they've just become second nature and they're in the routine, they're in your schedule, so you keep doing them, but actually they're not landing for you anymore. They don't feel good for you anymore. And so intuitively, you're feeling motivated to simply be and to slow down so you have an opportunity to actually see that. Same with, like maybe you're feeling motivated to simply be and hit pause so that you can review the direction of your life, what you're standing for, how you're engaging with the world, how you're showing up, right? And I'm not suggesting that consciously you're aware of that, but the intelligence of your body, yeah, it's speaking to you and asking you to pay loving attention by removing the feeling of ambition, the feeling of drive, the feeling of motivation, so that you start looking at and honoring what is deeply true for you that you're currently missing and would continue to miss if you kept on that doing path, if you kept on that mice wheel. Yeah. And so what if when you honored your motivation to simply be in whatever form that might be, maybe you're feeling motivated to receive pleasure or experience pleasure and bliss and slow and holiday time. What if when you honored that, the natural cycle, the full spectrum or the full cycle of motivation naturally swung back? Yeah, I'm not even going to say corrected. Naturally swung back. Yeah. And you naturally became more motivated around all of these doing measures and doing things because you honored your motivation to be as well. And what if you learned how to honor both so you never really felt like you had issues with your motivation anymore, right? That's what I have to say about motivation. I see so much positivity coaching like toxic positivity coaching, like toxic culture coaching that is, and like hand in the air, I started here, right? As a new coach, I didn't have the knowledge and the depth of training and the depth of awareness and skill set that I now have, and understanding of psychology that I now have. Yeah. And so I'm not saying that it's bad or wrong, but unfortunately, I do feel like it can be harmful, right? When we just keep looking for like, oh, well, I'm not motivated. Excuse me. So I must need a better routine. I must need a better strategy. I must be lazy. There must be something wrong with me, right? I must need to push myself or force myself or bully myself to go harder. So untrue. And of course, we all need that learning curve, right? Some of you might be listening to this and thinking, oh, no, that's bullshit. Like, that's not for me, because it hasn't become painful enough yet. Right? So that's what I have to say on motivation. The last little topic I want to jam on with you briefly is morning routine. Might or might not come as a surprise to you that I am not about morning routines. Not a blanket approach, but for the woman who is looking for that, to land like that perfect morning routine so it can be squared away and then that's taken care of, and then life's going to feel balanced and it's going to feel good. Like, my love, I am sorry. That is not how it works. And what I see, what I believe, and what I know is that the woman searching for that structure and that like squared away morning routine is lacking trust within herself. She's looking for that blanket approach so that she doesn't have to connect with herself anymore, because it feels really inconvenient and time consuming to check in with her body each day as to what it is that she might need and then to service that need. Now, what I think can be really healthy and rewarding is awareness to what are some of the rituals that feel really good and that really meet your needs on a pretty regular basis. Yeah. Where that becomes problematic is when it's like scheduled in and it becomes a checklist item. And if it's not done, you start shaming yourself or feeling less about yourself. The only skill that I personally believe is required to set ourselves up for an incredible day is to go inwards and ask ourselves, what is it that I need? What is it that I'm feeling? And to be able to respond to that in the moment, to trust yourself, to feel so trusting and connected to your body and the intelligence of your body that you are not feeling or having any experience that is anything other than what it is meant to be, or anything other than is directing you to the most important thing to pay attention to, loving attention to reach your full potential on that day, to have the best possible day available in the context of what is happening in your world. And so rigid morning routines, in my opinion, are just another example of avoidance, bypassing, distracting, disconnection from self. Yeah. The morning routine is not something, particularly for women who are feminine at their core. I have a slightly different opinion of this for men or individuals that are masculine at their core. But for women, which, from reading David Dieter's work, up to 80% at least of women are feminine at their core. And when I meet most women, they're operating from this false masculine sense. They think that they are masculine at their core because that's how they've learned to survive. That's how they've learned to prove themselves. That's how they've learned to cope in a very structured, rigid world, right? But particularly for women who are feminine at their core, the scheduled morning routine as a to-do list is just not going to get you far. It's going to feel like pressure. It's going to feel like effort. It's going to feel like another thing on your list to do. Okay. I think we've covered everything that I really wanted to cover in this conversation. A reminder, if you want the ebook that I have created for you, it's completely free. All you need to do is send me a DM on Instagram. My handle is at Gemma E. Hanley. And just use the word goals. Send me a DM with the word goals and the email address that you'd like me to send it to, and I will get that organized for you. I'm so excited to connect with you more and bring so much more to this space in the year ahead. I love you. Bye. Thank you for being here for this conversation, my love. If you would like more free resources, if you'd like to learn about my programs or coaching opportunities, you can find all of that information at my website, gemmahanley.com. I'll link it below in the show notes. And if you would like to connect daily, head over and find me on Instagram. My handle there is Gemma E. Hanley, and I reply to all of my DMs there personally. If you enjoyed this episode and found it valuable, please share it with someone. You never know who needs to hear one little thing to take their day from feeling stuck and heavy to light and free. See you on the next one.